From the Asgard Company Studios in beautiful Wichita Falls, Texas, from the finest mind in the modern fitness industry, the one true voice in the strength and conditioning profession, the most important podcast on the internet. Ladies and gentlemen, starting Strength Radio. Welcome back to Starting Strength Radio. It's Friday. I mean, what other day would it be? Friday is the day we are here with Starting Strength Radio. And I think y'all have gotten used to that by now. And, if you're watching this on Saturday, hey, catch up. Right? I mean, we've been here a whole day and you're just now watching it on Saturday. What the hell is wrong with you? We're here with our friend John Miller today. John's a Starting Strength coach, and he's currently going to school at Yale. So, for an MBA, is that right, John?
Yeah, correct.
Well, let me just start off by saying, la-di-da. So, why do we want to talk to John today? Well, John's got some interesting ideas about the fitness industry and how military veterans can find their way into what we are referring to as the new fitness industry here at Starting Strength Gyms. John, I appreciate your time today. Give us a little background on your personal situation and how you come to contact us about this and want to talk about this kind of program that we're working on with military veterans and plugging them into jobs in the new fitness industry.
Absolutely, and thanks so much for having me. So my story begins in the Army. I was an infantry officer for 8 years. The last job that I had was a Stryker infantry company commander at Fort Hood. I actually attended the seminar. The first seminar I went to was at Wichita Falls the week after I took command and started implementing starting strength to the best of my abilities with my company. My command was cut short by a training accident. I was injured pretty seriously, and so I spent the last year of my time in the military rehabbing from a spinal cord injury. Ended up getting medically retired, although to be fair to the Army, if I wanted to stay in, I could have. They would have found something for me to do. It just didn't match with my interests, so I got out and had about a year off. And, through the process of recovery and then in that year gap, I used Starting Strength to get better and pursued the credential. Got certified in 2018, right before I started grad school, like you said, at Yale. And I was on my way to being a, aspiring management consultant, following in the pretty traditional path out of business school. And I was in a recruiting meeting when I got a phone call from one of my former platoon members telling me that a guy named Dan Harden, who he used to serve with, committed suicide. And, Dan was the kind of guy who, after loading up our buddies onto the medevac bird missing limbs, volunteers to carry the mine detector. He, wanted to carry extra weight to ease the burden on his teammates. And, for a guy like that, the turnout at the funeral was pretty strong, and it ended up being a reunion of sorts. And I got looking around the table and knowing what, these men were capable of in service, seeing them struggle really stuck with me. So I abandoned any aspirations of going down the traditional MBA route and started my own business. The business is called Outlaws Incorporated. It's named after the platoon I served with. And what we do is we help the soldiers that fall through the cracks find meaningful work and guide them through the transition process. Primarily interested in skilled trade jobs, although for the past year I've been working on a project with Starting Strength gyms. Because I know the value of the program and the many ways in which the gyms are different from the classical model, Starting Strength gyms hits all the criteria we look for in employers. They're people-focused, they provide structure, they have some basis and values in serving the community. So it's the ideal place for veterans. So we have one gym currently at the final stages of approval for the GI Bill. And what this means is that separating service members can earn extra money to help ease the financial burden of switching careers while they're going through the apprenticeship program. And we hope to expand it. And that's really where my story ends, but I just want to add on a personal Rip. I feel personally indebted to you for being able to walk today, frankly. And I'm sure we'll get into the details of that rehab later, but if it hadn't been for Starting Strength and the clarity that you bring to stress recovery adaptation and physiological adaptations, there's a good chance I would not have exceeded all the expectations of my providers. So I guess I'll pause there and see where you want to go.
Well, I think that the expectations of your providers are very low. I'm not prepared to take credit for anything that you have personally accomplished, although I'm proud to have been able to provide a theoretical framework for you to view the process within. And I think that we've done a service in terms of developing the stress recovery adaptation model. In reality, more therapy providers need to get up off their dead asses and adopt this approach because it works every single time. Your situation demonstrates that. Brian Jones's situation demonstrates that. Countless other people that we have worked with in terms of rehab have demonstrated that the prior therapy paradigm is wrong and that the one we have developed is much more useful. So we're proud of what you have accomplished. So let's since we're on that subject, let's talk about your injury and what actually happened.
Yeah, so you'll get a kick out of this. The mechanism of injury was a fall from a Stryker, which is a big 8-wheeled armor personnel carrier. And it was from about a height of 5 feet. What made it particularly dangerous is a piece of safety equipment. So something called the gunner's restraint harness. It's basically a seatbelt that connects around your shoulders and attaches to the floor, to prevent you from being thrown out in the event of an IED strike or a rollover. Well, I had spent my entire career as a light infantryman, and vehicles were new. And I think at the time of the injury, I had been in a Stryker maybe 6 or 7 times, and I'm commanding a company of Stryker infantry. And so, like an idiot, I released from the quick release handle of the floor, which meant that there was this little snap hook dangling between my legs. And I get out of the vehicle to dismount, climb up over the hood, sit down, and push myself off. And that snap hook got caught on a bolt on the Stryker. And what that meant was, as my torso went forward, my body was yanked backwards.
And you can grabbed you by the leg, momentum. I guess, right?
Yep. And so rapid, violent extension of the neck. I completely avulsed and shattered C4, C5. I pushed the disc into my spinal cord and had a central cord injury is how they characterized it. Luckily, the OIC of the range was a former Special Forces medic. And so as I'm coming to, I can't feel anything below the neck. I can't move. All I see is dirt and taste blood. I hear, lot of hubbub, and thank God for Enrique Zelaya for being there, for saving my life, because he knew how to prevent them from moving me, and doing further damage. So that was the injury.
That would have been a hell of a lot easier to. That'd have been real easy to screw that up, wouldn't it?
Right.
I mean,
right.
in a situation, somebody doesn't know the nature of that injury and tries to move you, tries to get you sorted out onto a stretcher and everything, that could have just killed you real easily. So, the guy was, that's a providential situation there, wasn't it?
It's the first of many lucky events surrounding this whole occurrence. But, the next 48 hours are touch and go in terms of how, what the exact diagnosis was. I think I sent over some footage of the hole that was in the spinal cord. And I ended up at Baylor Scott and White, and the neurosurgeons there realized there's no transection, and their care plan was to leave me in the collar for 6 weeks in the hospital, take off the collar, and then flex and extend my neck. And if I further damage my neck or my spine, they said, then we'll operate. And if not, well, then you're on your way to healing. And speaking of luck, I happen to be fortunate enough to be married to a physician who, through her network, got a second opinion. And they said, that's crazy. Don't do that. And a couple days later, I think 5 or 6 days later, I was in San Antonio getting excellent care. They did an ACDF, which is an anterior cervical discectomy and fusion.
Right.
Once they took the disc out, completely relieved all the pressure on the spinal cord, and it was just
that seems like
a
more intelligent approach to that injury than just waiting 6 weeks to see what would happen. You leave a nerve compressed for any length of time. Well, the nerve is damaged, and this was a very important nerve to not be damaged.
This whole time.
I wonder what possessed them to think that would be a good way to do this. Did you ever have a conversation with them about that?
We were looking forward, so we didn't look back, and I think I did hear an explanation at one point, but that period I was had such tunnel vision, was on so many drugs.
Right.
And during this period also, I still didn't have any motor function, bowel bladder below the, anything below the neck. And so I do remember though, one of the neurosurgeons doing a checkup, and he had forgotten his little reflex hammer. And so he just starts looking around the room and finds a flashlight, takes a flashlight and starts banging on my feet with it. And he just nods and says, yeah, he's fine. He walked out.
God. Well, it's a good thing you're fine. Sounds like it could easily have gone the other way. Oh, shit.
Exactly.
So you got better and you're all healed up, and you've what was the date of that injury? That was back 10 years ago.
September 2017.
Oh, so it's just about 4 years ago. 3.5 years ago now.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So you had been training prior to the injury, right?
Yep. I had just finished my own LP, and I probably discovered starting strength through Brett McKay's videos. I'm pretty sure that was sort of like how I found, and then attended the seminar almost immediately after, because what I was hearing was things that had been in the back of my head going through the military fitness paradigm and the functional fitness, and whatever the fad was, you name it, I tried it out at one point in my military career. But in the back of my mind, I was always thinking, I feel like this is overcomplicated. I feel like all I need is some sort of structured progression, but that wasn't what everybody else was saying and all the fit
Right.
people that I looked up to. So, yeah, I had just finished the LP. And as it's sort of a testament to the success of the program, I didn't run once from when I took command to when I took my first PT test as a commander and maxed the run. And I sort of did that as an experiment, having not run.
We try to tell people that will happen, but nobody believes you. Nobody believes. Everybody thinks they have to run in order to be able to run. Guy in his 20s can run, whether he runs or not, but nobody believes that. So,
I was a pretty scrawny guy to begin with, so.
Well, you had no trouble running then, did you?
Exactly.
Scrawny people run pretty well.
It's important to point out he's an infantryman too. He's not,
Yeah.
I mean, he's not just spending his time sitting at a desk or whatever.
Yeah, he's not just sitting around.
In other words, typically it's the guys who think they need to run all the time, and here's a guy who just didn't run.
Right. Well, maybe we'll get an article out of John about not running and then running. That'd be real good. Maybe you need to write that as an article for us. We're always looking for stuff to run on the website, and that would be good.
That would be, yeah.
Would be real good. So, here we are. It's 2021. All right. 2021. You're 3.5 years after the injury, and you've been okay for, 3 years now? How long did it take you to get to where you were, up and around? And
Yep. I was training 4 weeks out of the hospital. So, leaving in a wheelchair, progressing to cane.
So they did the surgery, and that immediately relieved the pressure. And just, fixed the lesion, basically, and then you had to heal up from the surgery. And once that was, right. I'll bet you very clearly remember waking up after that surgery and being able to feel your TT. I'll bet you clearly remember that, don't you?
The first time I could use the bathroom on my own, I cried.
Oh, I understand, man. I understand. Boys, being boys, our TTs are very important to us. I remember when I had my neck surgery back in 1999. I had a real bad osteophyte mashing into my arm, and the pain was horrible. It was just all I could do to, get through the day, and it got so damn bad that surgery became not optional. And I remember waking up in the recovery room and looking down at my arm and saying, "This is the first conscious thought I had. The pain's gone." And then I went back to sleep. Yep. But I clearly remember that. And I'm sure you remember the same damn thing, only on a order of magnitude more grateful than I was. And so you were training 4 weeks post-op. Boy, it is a good thing your wife got you some better advice than, we're just going to let you lay here in your own piss and shit for the next 6 weeks, and just see what happens after that. But that's another show. I'm real interested in why they thought that was a good idea, but you don't know, and hell, they don't know either. So we're glad you're all right. So. You had a good friend that committed suicide after having served with you guys in the Army, and I don't want to go into that as much as I want to, because that kind of thing's not What do you think could have prevented that from happening?
Well, I had lost touch with Dan after I, was reassigned and progressed on with my career. So I can't comment on his, family situation or what else is going on in his life. I will say that suicide has been a non-insignificant part of my military career, unfortunately, as both investigating other suicides, having close friends commit suicide, and some common threads that I think
guess
are
as
relevant.
company commander, that's part of your responsibility, right? To investigate things like that within
Right.
your command,
Yep.
right?
Right, and typically it's other units that if you're an investigator, they bring in somebody from outside to avoid any conflicts of interest. But this is sort of a half-baked thought I've been throwing around my head. But on the line of duty investigation form, this standard form you fill out anytime a service member dies, there's a block that says, was this person mentally sound? And for a suicide, you automatically check no, and it has to be a medical provider that signs off, because by definition, if they commit suicide, that's an irrational action. And so
I don't know that that's true. I mean, would you agree with that in all instances? Would you agree that anyone that kills themselves is irrational?
Well, you're exactly picking up on what direction I'm going in, which is, what would you have to believe for that to be rational to you? And I think reframing suicide as the result of some combination of conditions that make it seem like a rational choice. Could be you're in an altered state, whatever. But if we take a step back and just think about military service in general, you're taking young men and women, you're conditioning them to be blindly obedient, which is a necessary function for anybody who's joining the military. Mm-hmm. And I'm not making any normative claims here about what should or should not be the case, but that's just a fact. And you put them in an extremely structured environment, and if they leave after 3 years without achieving a lot of rank and responsibility, the entire way in which their world is framed is reversed. Pure right. Structure, zero autonomy, to pure autonomy and zero structure.
Right. And
I think that's pretty traumatic. It was traumatic for me, and I was a captain with a college degree, with a amazing support network, and I didn't have to worry about food on the table or a roof over my head. I was, the entire time I was going through the rehab process, I was crossing paths with young soldiers who didn't have the support network, who didn't have the life experience that I had, who didn't have the family support, and I could see the difference in my outcomes compared to theirs. Mm-hmm. And that was one of
in a way. When you take a kid and stick him into a military situation like that, you're essentially taking away his adulthood in some sense, in terms
sure.
of the fact that adults decide for themselves what's best and then do that, or at least they should, and they try to, that sort of thing. But if you enter a military situation, you're ceding your autonomy for a period of time. Now, if it's it's 4 years, and you're a typical little 18-year-old puke who's not worthy of autonomy, basically, this is this additional structure that is provided by the military can be very, very helpful. I know that when I was 18, I probably should have gone in the military instead of going straight into college, because I had no business being in college. I was just a little undisciplined little turd, and I would have benefited from the structure that would have been provided by the military. But that was 1974, and the military was not popular back then because we'd just gotten our asses out of Vietnam, and there was a lot of resistance to the idea. My parents were not supportive of the military. My dad had been in World War II, and he thought it was kind of stupid for anybody to voluntarily go into the service, and so I didn't get the advice I probably should have gotten, is to go into the military. But so in some ways it postpones adulthood, and for some people it actually improves the transition into adulthood. But I think your comment is valuable in that you go from when you go into the military, you're in a situation of very little autonomy, and you're taught blind obedience, and then they get rid of you in 4 years, and here you are, you get off the bus, and for the first time you've had to make a decision about what the hell you're going to do today, because it's been decided for you for quite some time.
Exactly. And you've been a part of a common purpose. There's been no question about when you put that uniform on and you walk through the airport and people look at you, what you represent.
Mm-hmm.
And you take that identity away from somebody, it's a challenge that has to be dealt with. And this means a lot to me. There's a long list of young veterans that I served with who struggled in and out of service. A lot of times just because it was, they just got dealt a bad hand, or, unfortunately didn't have a great chain of command, or, a series of bad experiences or mistakes that they couldn't recover from. And that set them back irrevocably from what they're actually capable of achieving. And, just to bring things back to the gyms and their opportunities for apprenticeship, that's precisely filling the gap for those young men and women who could use that.
Right. It provides a framework for the decisions they're going to make at work, while at the same time requiring of them the resourcefulness to apply that framework in a variety of different situations. So it's kind of halfway between blind obedience and absolute autonomy. And I see your point.
Well, there should be some, I think the process works best if it's gradual. So, like, for example, a young veteran who I recently placed in a concrete installation firm in South Carolina, simple things, what's my budget? How am I going to fill out my emergency savings over the next few months' paychecks? Where am I going to live? How am I commuting to work? Do I have the tools and the equipment that are necessary to do this job successfully? Walking somebody through that sounds trivial, but when, a part of a comprehensive plan to get them from point A to point B, it's tremendously valuable. And, the predictability provided by an apprenticeship program, any apprenticeship program really, but, the gym one specifically, is another example of bringing that structure gradually into their lives until they're ready to, go out on their own in a more complete sense.
I think it's going to work out well for us and for you guys, because one of the challenges that any business has in selecting people who want to come on and work for them is the selection process. It can be hit or miss. We don't know these people. We don't know their background. They fill out an application. Sometimes they're completely full of shit. We've had some experience with that recently. People who are just absolutely unsuited for the position. And if we got a choice between some kid we don't know and some kid with a military background, he's vetted for us. I mean, the fact that he was not dishonorably discharged is it's an important thing, you know. And I think this is going to work out quite well as the system of gyms grows. If we could take a majority of the people that are interested in working for us out of veteran status and into starting strength coach status, that's a wonderful thing for everybody. Saves us time and gives them something instructive to look forward to doing.
And maybe there's a feedback loop where it gets back to, you know, you have a coalition of people that can help incorporate some of this successfully in the military where I failed, you know?
Well, that's a very good point. The military, and you and I discussed this briefly the other day, the military is famous for not being adaptable. Right? They like to appear adaptable, but the military is here in 2021. The military is still in the job of killing people and breaking things. That's what we have the military for, is to kill people and break things. Now you can, say that the military is does good things all over the world and all this other shit, but and that may be a part of it, but the primary function of any military is to kill people and break things for the purpose of fighting a war and winning it. And in 2021, running 5 miles doesn't really have a lot to do with any aspect of killing people and breaking things, because of the changes in killing people and breaking things technology over the past 70 years. We don't do things now the way we did in World War I. And nonetheless, the military bases basic training on endurance, on running, on 900 push-ups, 900 sit-ups, this sort of thing. Things that are absolutely pointless with respect to the physical adaptation necessary for the role of the military in 2021. Now, you and I can sit down and have a rational discussion about this, and you and I understand completely that that is in fact the case, that force production instead of sub-maximal repetition of movement is much more critical to the physical mission of being in the military. But if you get myself and you and 2 or 3 other officers involved in the discussion, and everyone agrees that that is absolutely true, nothing will still be done, because the whole gigantic aggregate mass of the military bureaucracy is a bureaucracy. That's all it is. It's a bureaucracy. And bureaucracies do one thing and one thing only. They perpetuate themselves while assuming no personal responsibility for any aspect of that perpetuation. That's what they do. All bureaucracies function that way. And as a result, bureaucracies become about the process. Not about the outcome, but about the process. And as long as the process is being followed, then everybody within the bureaucracy's ass is covered. So you and I come along and we say, well, we would like to make basic training into a 6-month novice linear progression instead of 6 months worth of running 5 miles. And amongst that novice linear progression, everybody's getting stronger, and there's more time now for actual teaching them things about killing people and breaking things and making them better soldiers, stronger soldiers, better soldiers, because now more time is freed up because the novice linear progression doesn't take but a couple of hours, 3 days a week. That would be more efficient, but it's not going to happen. Because of the nature of the military bureaucracy, it's not going to happen. And if we, me and you, and all of us involved in starting strength can expose more military people to the idea that forms the basis of the novice linear progression. 5 pounds of workout on basic exercises that have the capacity to be trained for a long period of time. Then maybe some of it will bleed back up into the upper echelons of the bureaucracy. I don't think it will. But wouldn't it be cool if it did?
I do have some lessons learned. If there are leaders in the military out there interested in doing this, you basically need 3 ingredients, realistically. One is support of your chain of command, which I had. And I achieved that by using the Army's own doctrine against it. I used the 8-step training model. I built, all the PowerPoint slides. I justified it with quantitative indicators of success. Second thing you need is equipment, and this is the first obstacle I hit, which is crazy because out of the back door of my office was a warehouse full of exercise equipment owned by some civilian agency on post that we couldn't get access to because nobody knew who the approving authority was. It was
Was
toward,
it machines
every day
and
I would
stuff?
park my. No, it was because it was from like the 80s. It was like, old racks, barbells that were really bad shape, but WD-40, take them to the motor pool,
fix
fine.
those.
They even had the old cast iron plates that were 100 pounds each. Yeah, so they had usable stuff, and for soldiers that's exactly what you want. You don't want a brand new power rack, right?
It's not necessary. It's not necessary.
Yeah.
One of the advantages of the application of the novice linear progression to basic training is it doesn't cost anything.
Exactly.
Compared to the money that the base had spent on all 5 of those gyms that are scattered all over the property there, we're talking about 5% of that money. We're talking about no money at all. And this is, I hate to be cynical, John, but the fact that there's not really any money in a contract for this might mitigate against somebody advocating for that contract because, the Army just recently implemented that silly-ass trap bar deadlift into the PT. Wonder how many trap bar deadlifts Sorinex sold the U.S. military as a result of that. You think that money might have had something to do with that decision? Gosh, I don't know. That might not be a fair accusation, but it does cross the mind of a cynical civilian such as myself.
Well, there's cynical and then there's jaded because my reaction to all that was, oh God, at least they're finally using something that looks like a deadlift.
Right.
I was just thankful about that.
But
if you don't mind, I can finish that point.
Yeah.
The third ingredient is time.
Right.
And the daily PT formation that I had for a company of 152 soldiers on the books was maybe 30 soldiers because everyone else was tasked out for things that had nothing to do with our mission. And this, leaders have been wringing their hands about this for as long as I've been in the military, and the best we can hope for is some mitigation. The taskings are never going to go away, but commanders can do this if those three ingredients are in place, and expectation management means this is a multi-month process for most units unless you have a complete reform from the top down.
And when is the last time such a thing occurred? A complete reform from the top down? 1775. That's the last time that occurred. Right? This is something I used to worry about. We've been asked about this over and over and over again over the course of 15 years of doing our seminars. What do you think would be the best thing that could happen with starting strength? What would you like to get done? And I've said since the beginning, I would love to be able to completely reform basic training for all of the military, because it's the most important thing that we could do to make a radical, immediate, inexpensive improvement in combat readiness for everybody involved in getting a government paycheck for being in the military. And it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen, because always remember the following maxim. The facts, although interesting, are irrelevant. The fact that our way of physical preparation works better than their way of physical preparation is true, but it doesn't matter that it's true. All that matters is that this is what they're going to do, and why they're going to do it that way involves the fact that they've always done it that way, and everybody in a decision-making capacity is perfectly comfortable with continuing to do it that way. And the fact that it doesn't work as well as something else is just not interesting to them. So here we are in 2021. We need to get these kids who are leaving a military commitment headed in a better direction than just turning them loose and letting them make their own mistakes. Because sometimes the kids in that position make terrible mistakes. And it's just because, some people make mistakes, and that's just the way it is. I'm happy that you see the possibilities that present themselves with involvement of this particular demographic with our method. Tell me about how you came to that conclusion.
I mean, it really started with the rehab. So I was primed as I came out of surgery to think, yesterday I could move my arm to touch my nose. Today I'm going to try and pick up a spoon. Because to me that was 5 pounds.
Yes.
And then, you can see the progression from the first
5
time
pounds is in scare quotes. I hope everybody understands that. But 5 pounds means increments, right?
Right. And when you've got a catheter in and you can't move anything below the neck, small victories matter. And to me, the psychology of the SRA model and the manner in which you've presented it and actively gone for simplicity here is really fascinating to me, because I think that within that approach is the keys to a lot of the success that I experienced personally, at least. And just to clarify for our listeners, I wasn't waiting until I could get the barbell on my back to apply this model. I was standing up from a chair. I was doing planks in my room, just doing occupational therapy things. Whatever I could do yesterday, I was trying to go 5 pounds more. And and look, I'm not prepared to make, categorical claims about spinal cord injury rehab, but that, having a framework for success, for incremental improvement on top of a strong support network was, an effective recipe, and it's easily replicable. And, I think one thing, you talked about cynicism, another thing that really struck me was, as I was doing this rehab on my own, I was watching, or experiencing also what was being provided as the solution or the protocol from the providers. And it was really depressing because for example, I used to drive down, once they finally scheduled my spinal focused PT rehab that had to be referred out. Once they finally did that, I used to drive to my appointment in Austin and then immediately drive to Luke's Barbell Club and learn and train there, in the same day, And so I'm in the PT office throwing a medicine ball and flex extending my shoulders and all this other silly stuff.
Just dance practice. Sure.
And it's all very nice, well-meaning people who are running this stuff, and I would hate to imply that, I would ever attack, them personally.
Well, it's not their intentions that are the problem.
Sure.
They haven't been prepared adequately by their educational structure. They don't understand that the way I've always thought about this is they don't understand that they are there to provide stress from which you can recover and adapt. Their paradigm is that the stress was the injury, and that everything that happens after the injury is it can be basically the same thing in terms of every time they go in. They give you the same medicine ball. They give you the same little squeezy thing to use with your hands. They give you the same little band to do your little silly-ass external rotation stuff on, despite the fact that that's not the nature of the injury. They give you the same things over and over and over again without any awareness of the fact that they are there to create a stress, which you are there to progressively recover from. Does that kind of describe what you experienced?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I repeatedly got the impression that they had never had a patient who left the office to go continue the rehab process. I mean, I think the sword cuts both ways. In other words, they not only were they approaching it from a different, philosophy or paradigm or whatever you want to call it, but their day-to-day patient that they're used to seeing expected to show up, do the reps of external rotation, and if it didn't work, then on to the next provider. So I was certainly like an alien to them in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure they're just not prepared to think about it the same way we do. And I don't know, that's a damn shame. In terms of the time and money wasted worldwide on rehab. It's just a damn shame.
I don't know if this gives you any hope, but I used to be one of those people who thought it was important to, foam roll and, have variability. I certainly used to think differently, and I continually, try to have an open mind. But so there's nothing that says that people can't over time, change their minds and learn new things.
Oh, I'm completely aware of that. It's just that the problem is that people in this situation refer to the authority of their educational background. I mean, you finally get into PT school. That's hard to do, right? You finally try hard to get getting into PT school is harder than getting into medical school because there are fewer slots, because there are fewer PT schools. So the tendency is to, now that I've gotten into PT school, most people don't go in there and say, hold on, just a minute, you guys are all full of shit. It's not humans. That's not human behavior. This was hard to get into. They must be right. And so I'm just going to do what I'm told. I'm going to think the way they teach me to think, because I fought like hell to get in here and be taught this. And as a result, a lot of people just don't know a lot of stuff. They think a lot of people know things that are not right, and they are unwilling to question the paradigm. We see this an awful lot these days. Lots and lots of people that should know better are behaving in ways that make no sense now. And this is just one little example of that. But I don't know. I think maybe if we made better inroads into physical therapy, that might be the way into the military. But I don't have any particular designs on being able to actually accomplish either one of those very important things, just because there's too much lined up against us. So what it boils down to is we're responsible for ourselves. And I'm happy that you have decided to use our framework to try to make a difference in these kids' lives. So when we take people into Starting Strength, new clients are people that have decided for themselves that stronger is better. Stronger is what they want to be. And we provide them a method by which to obtain that adaptation. We take people that have never even thought about doing the basic barbell exercises that, muscle heads have traditionally done. And we provide them with a structure that, is the basic exercises, 5 pounds of workout. And one of the most amazing things about this is that process, having never occurred to most people before, immediately begins to yield results. And it is a process that applies to just damn near everything else they do in life. For your kids coming out of the service, this can be a revelatory experience, can't it?
Yes. I think you definitely used the right word there. I could tell you lots of examples of veterans I've worked with personally who just being told that they have agency and are, there's that great line from The Departed, I'd rather my environment be a product of me than me of my environment.
Yeah.
Just that, planting that little seed in somebody's head can go a long way. And then obviously you back it up with the predictability of a process that, like Nick mentioned. And so that's absolutely one of the consequences of being a young kid, no other civilian work experience, maybe don't have great coping skills because you had, a rough upbringing, turned to the military because it was a paycheck. Now entering the civilian world, you may not have an accurate perception of what the possibilities are simply because you never considered, your own potential and ability to change your circumstances. And, I appreciate Nick bringing that up because that's a great point. This sense of agency that you get when you are in control of your own training on the way in a very manageable sequence to certification, it's very powerful.
Well, I think that it's the thing about it is that as it turns out, one of the most beneficial aspects of our approach to strength training is that it applies to everything else the person does, and I don't think that's adequately appreciated. You're handing anybody that does this a tool that they can apply to everything else they do. 5 more pounds, right? That's a very powerful basic stuff. 5 more pounds. It seems so obvious that it's kind of astonishing that no one else has articulated it before we did, because it's just laying there, and it works every single time it's tried with everybody that it's tried with, and a lot of people have benefited from getting their shit together using the tools that they learned under the bar. And this certainly applies to these kids coming out of the military and looking for a new way to behave, essentially, a new way to behave once they separate.
Completely agree. I really liked your, example. I think it was the first seminar I went to of learning the trumpet. And that really resonated with me because one of the rehab activities I had was picking music back up. And I had to start
I see your
from
Coltrane
really,
poster
really
behind you.
level.
I see your Coltrane
Is that coming
poster.
through? Yeah.
You a sax player?
Yeah.
Or?
No, just he's one of my favorites. Before I joined the military, I thought I might be a jazz guitarist.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've picked it back up and you still play?
I do. It's coming back slowly though. Honestly, I try and pretend that I didn't have an injury because it makes it easier to cope with the loss of chops over the years. But there may be some lingering effects.
Well, I've been trying like hell for 24 years to gain chops, and they just they won't come. Chops don't come for me. You're an
intermediate phase of your trumpet playing?
I played the trumpet at the level of an average 8th grader. Yeah, I couldn't sit in 3rd chair in a high school band. I really am not any better than that, but I have a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun.
Increase your training frequency.
Increase the volume.
Increase volume.
Hypertrophy.
Volume and intensity. Stress recovery adaptation. Well, John, tell us what you have in mind as far as the process by which people leaving a service commitment, people separating, can work with us on this kind of on this introduction into your business and into our business specifically.
Absolutely. Startingstrengthgyms.com. Click on the tab How to Become a Coach. There's already a box to check if you're a veteran. That gets that gets sent directly to me, and we set up an appointment. Because of the red tape involved, it's usually better to do these things over a phone conversation. But I'm happy to communicate. The other day I was talking to somebody who was in Afghanistan, so we had to text. That was fine. If you like what you hear, but you'd like to try something other than a career as a starting strength coach, my website is vetsmakeit.com, which is VETSMAKEIT, and at vetsmakeit on all the social media. And the bottom line is tailored mentorship. We put your interests first. We like to find employers that have training pathways and are skilled trade, catering mostly to non-college educated younger veterans. But, we will talk to anybody. If we don't have the answers, we'll find somebody that does.
And you guys that are watching this, pay attention to the fact that we're not interested in your college education. What we do in gyms is very badly prepared for in college. Those of you that are entertaining the idea of going back to school and going into the fitness industry with an exercise physiology background, that works fine if you want to be a pin setter at a Globo gym. But it does not prepare you for what we do. What we do is prepared for by you training and you learning and you thinking about the process that we advocate in terms of getting you from where you are right now to stronger 9 months down the road. What you learn in your own novice training progression under the bar is far, far more valuable than anything you will obtain in school. Understanding physiology and the biology and the physics of all of this stuff is very, very important. But you can teach yourself that, and we can help you learn that. We have a coaching prep course. It's available on the website. And that helps you get the background, the academic background you need to do the things that you're going to have to do as a coach in a gym. But if you think that you can go to a school and get a 4-year degree in exercise physiology and come out able to correctly coach a deadlift, that's not what happens. I'm sorry, that's not what happens. And I think that what we're saying is that the old expectation that you have to have a college degree to get anything done now that's rapidly losing its polish.
Can I put a point on that?
Oh yeah, please. We talk about this all the time. College is expensive, and if it's expensive as well as useless, don't do it.
I've spoken to a lot of very successful builders, contractors, high six figures, lots of earning potential, and the one thing that they tell me, it's universal, is I can teach somebody skills, I can't teach them the right attitude.
Right.
Show up at the right place at the right time. And in a sound bite, one builder in specific said, look, I'm only going to hire somebody if I'd also invite them to my house for Thanksgiving. And if you're getting out of the military, let that sink in. It's not about credentials and, getting the degree alone. You got to have the right character to go along with it.
Right. Oh, that's absolutely true. And a lot of that character, to reiterate, is built under the barbell yourself. What you learn by taking your personal squat from 115 to 365 is what you have that is available to other people in this profession. And if you've never done that, you're not the right person for what we want to get done. If you haven't done it, you're either not prepared or you have consciously refused to prepare, neither one of which is acceptable. You learn under the bar. You learn all kinds of things under the bar. You learn the kind of things under the bar that make the men want to invite you over for Thanksgiving dinner. I know that sounds grandiose, and but it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. Some of the most valuable lessons that can only be learned this way are learned under the bar. How to finish the 5th rep of a set you don't know that you can do. Well, the way you learn that is you try it. And every time somebody does something, they learn something about themselves. Doesn't matter how long they've been training. They learn something about themselves. And we're eager to meet you if you have, if you find yourself in this situation. We're eager to meet you. We can put you to work. And we want your experience, because if you've come out of the military, you've been in conflict and you've learned many good technical things, and you've got a background that is structured and ordered, we can fit you into our program if you'll meet us halfway. And I think John's situation is something that you need to investigate. John, thanks for being with us today on Starting Strength Radio.
It's my
How
pleasure.
do people get a hold of you?
The website is vetsmakeit.com, VETSMAKEIT.com. That's the same for Instagram handle. Scheduled appointment, no commitment necessary.
Okay. Email, you can just find you at that website, vetsmakeit.com.
Correct, yeah, just info@vetsmakeit.com.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, John Miller. Appreciate your being here. We're glad to have you associated with us. It's guys like you that demonstrate the value of what we do. And we're happy to have made whatever contribution to your situation we've made, and we're looking forward to you making a similar contribution to ours.
Thank you so much, Rip. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again, John. And thank you guys for watching us. We'll see you next week on Starting Strength Radio.